we this is the first CAPA hosted by the local government team rather than the main CAPA team. And I wanted to start out by introducing myself for those of you who don't know me and the organizing team. So I'm Eric Minty. I'm on the board of WeCan, and I'm also on the local government team. And I live in Victoria. And I'd really like to acknowledge the CAPA organizing team that threw this together very much at the last minute with duct tape, baling wire, and a few shoelaces. And so this was, it's all coming together. I can't promise that it will be perfect. So Casey Stein, Jane Devonshire, Mary Wagner, Guy Dauncey, Shaylee Renee Elsom, and Sunil. Sunil was helping out as well. There you are, Sunil. I can see you on the bottom. So thank you everybody for making this happen. And I think we're going to be doing more of this. I'm hoping that you find it useful. I'd like to start out with a land acknowledgement. And so I realize that we're all calling in from different territories. Many of them may be unceded territories of Indigenous peoples. I myself am calling from the traditional unceded territories of the Songhees and Esquimalt people, and what is known as the Lekwungen speaking people. And I recently learned, this is a fun fact, I like to nerd out about these things, that Lekwungen is considered to be the language of the land. And I like that thought because it tells me that if the land is speaking, then it is our duty to listen. And so that's a thought that I like to carry with me.
There we go.
There we go. So a quick poll to get everybody warmed up. Have you already made plans to contact your local UBCM delegates ahead of the convention?
So we got 38 people present, and so far we've got 15 who've responded. So another 21, 22, 23, 24, 25.
This is the poll to make sure that you're awake.
Yes. So we're up to 30. Just 6 people haven't done it, including me as one of them, and use another. So I'll end the poll there and share the results.
No, we haven't made plans yet, but some of you have. So there we go. So hopefully by the end of this, we can change that, and that we've got you armed with some plans to make a difference. So without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker. Sharon Cross served as an elected councillor with the city of Cranbrook from 2011 to 2014. She's currently sitting on the boards of the Wild Site Kimberley Cranbrook branch, East Kootenay Climate Hub, and the Kootenay River Network. She is currently a member of the Social Planning Society, the Cranbrook Food Action Committee, and Climate Safe Cities. So, take it away, Sharon. You're going to tell us all about UBCM.
Thanks, Eric. Well, thank you so very much for the opportunity to present my experience as a former Cranbrook City Councillor on getting successful motions in the resolutions book for UBCM. I've put a link to the 2024 UBCM resolutions book included in the document I've shared in the chat. All the resolutions submitted for this year can be found there. How to be heard. Without being on a municipal council, it is important to find champions for your cause on city councils and regional districts. My recommendation is to approach one councillor sitting on a progressive municipality. Provide your proposed draft motion with a one-page backgrounder outlining the rationale for the motion. Ask your champion to get the motion on their city council agenda for discussion. It may be amended and hopefully approved. Once council approves the motion, it moves forward to the regional level and goes through the same process. This is where you'll need several champions to get your motion approved at the regional level. I stood by the door and handed out information about the importance of our motion at the Association of Kootenay Boundary Local Government Convention before we went in to vote. After the regional association has approved your motion, this is when you start mobilizing all your municipal champions to support the motion at UBCM. In the talking notes that I'll share at the end of the chat, there's 2 examples of successful resolutions that I proposed in 2013 that went forward from Cranbrook City Council, then to AKBLG, where they were approved and forwarded to UBCM. For one of the resolutions, Cranbrook City Council also sent a letter via email to every city councillor in the province asking for their consideration of our motion at UBCM. The backgrounder information was included in the letter. After AKBLG approved the motion, it was sent to UBCM and was identified as Resolution B89, 2-tiered police force. It was endorsed by UBCM executive with an amendment. So I didn't have to speak to the resolution as it did not have to go to the delegates for a vote. Preparing resolutions. All resolutions consist of a preamble and an enactment. The preamble describes the issue and the enactment outlines the action being requested. A resolution should answer 3 questions. What is the problem? What is causing the problem? What is the best way to solve the problem? The preamble begins with whereas. It is a concise sentence about the nature of the problem or the reason for the request. It answers, what is the problem? What is causing the problem? State the problem and its cause and explain clearly and briefly the reasons for the resolution. The preamble should contain no more than 2 whereas clauses. If explaining the problem requires more than 2 clauses, then provide supporting documents to describe the problem more fully. Do not add extra clauses. The enactment begins with the phrase, therefore be it resolved, and is a concise sentence that answers the question, what is the best way to solve the problem? The enactment should propose a specific action by UBCM. Keep it short and clear. The wording should leave no doubt about the proposed action. Address only one subject in the text of the resolution. Delegates will not support a resolution if it is too complex for them to understand quickly. Use simple, action-oriented language. Explain the situation briefly and state clearly the action required. It's easier for delegates to consider the resolution. Provide factual background information. Even a carefully written resolution may not be able to convey the scope of the problem or the action being requested. Provide factual background information to ensure that the resolution is understood fully. And all this is covered in the documents in the chat. I'll add another one. May the force be with you.
Thank you, Sharon. And I want to point out that this is really important because to start this process now for next year, because I know we're focusing on this year's UBCM convention, but this process of identifying resolutions, getting them championed, doing the research, that takes time. So it's really important that we can start that process now, and that's really important that that Sharon highlighted that as well. Jane, you had your hand up. Did you want to add something? You are on mute.
Sorry, I hit the wrong button.
Oh, I see. Okay. So next up, we've got Mary Wagner, who is going to explain to us the different types of resolution and how they work through how they work at the UBCM conference. And that's going to help us sort of understand what we will provide you with a link to the resolutions handbook. You can find it on the UBCM website, but we'll provide you with those links to make it easy for you. And it can be a bit of a zoo to navigate it if you've never seen before. So Mary's going to help us to understand that. And so to introduce Mary Wagner, Dr. Mary Wagner, as I just recently learned, has a PhD in biochemistry from the University of Victoria. and is a current councillor for the city of Langford, focusing on climate action, sustainable development, and community engagement. She's actively involved in the South Island Climate Action Network, the Friends of Millstream Watershed, and Weekend's local government team, and also helped us organize this CAPA here tonight. So, Mary, it is your show now.
Thank you so much. And thanks to Sharon for laying out the bit of a detailed process for how a resolution is crafted. It's really important that those are, well thought out and that it's given a lot of time. And if you're part of a climate action group or have an environmental concern, your counselors could really use your support, because it takes a lot of energy to put these together and to make sure that there's really good information, that there's excitement around it, and then reminders to keep plugging away. So it kind of needs all of us getting together. So as mentioned, the resolutions booklet is available online for the UBCM conference, but it's quite a large document. And if you're not that familiar, it can be a bit overwhelming. And I've been to UBCM before, and I'm going again this year. And still, when I opened it, I went, oh, it's a lot of information. And you're also getting, as a counselor, you're getting bombarded with, hundreds of emails a day, invites to all kinds of receptions, and people want you to support the resolution. And so you're getting a lot of information the week before the conference, and having support from your local community about what they would like you to focus on, because it's really important, I think, for a feeling for, as a counselor, I want to represent my constituents. I want them to support me and have me bring their ideas out into the open, and to really not just be representing myself, but do what I feel is good for the community. So it makes me feel good to hear from the public. So please do write into your counselors ahead of time and let them know what your favorite resolution would be. But just to go over quickly a little bit of the process, when you're actually at the conference, we vote by phone. Only elected officials we're eligible to vote, and there's electronic voting. So these resolutions get read out, and then if it's debated individually, then there's a conversation about it. But there's actually a lot of resolutions that don't get talked about at all. So the way the UBCM committee that looks at resolutions organizes things is they'll have blocks that are endorsed resolutions, and there can be like 150 of these, where they actually feel it already fits the mandate. They believe it's, something that's come up before. There's broad support amongst municipalities, so they're endorsing it. So that just gets voted on as a block, unless somebody wants to take something out. And they have that right to, on the floor, say, I want this removed. And if people agree, it gets taken out. Similarly, with the not endorsed block, there's a whole lot of resolutions that unfortunately are outside of scope, or they don't feel they're feasible, or some of them are not even particularly, maybe they just don't think they're worthy. But some of them are quite good. So actually in this case, there's I feel an important one for free transit for youth. And we're going to try to get that removed from the not endorsed block and have a motion on the floor that says we do want to debate this, because if we don't get it pulled from the not endorsed block, it gets voted on as not endorsed and it's gone. And that's that. It never sees the light of day. So there's this sequence of events which becomes really important, and it can be very dynamic and interesting, and there's several sessions. So certain ones come up right front with the UBCM committee puts forward their special resolutions first. There's just 3 of them and they get debated. Then there's the endorsed block that gets done, then the not endorsed block, and then we get to the resolutions that say no recommendation. So when you're looking through the book, if you're interested in actually looking at what the resolutions are and what your delegates will be voting on, there's many resolutions, and they're just listed. So there's something like, NR 24, Provincial Fund for Energy Efficiency, Zero Emissions Equipment for Existing Buildings. NR 50, Relaxed Diking Standards, etc., etc. There's just all these not recommended resolutions, which might be great, and some of them you may not support, and you would like your delegate to speak against them. So all these ones that are not recommended, these resolutions will get put forward on the floor, and there'll be an opportunity for people to speak for or against live at the time using the microphones on the floor, so that there can be amendments, there can be, quite a vigorous debate over like really core values. So it can be quite exciting, and there's often a lot of time pressure. So if you have a resolution that you're really keen on, you would want to prepare your mayor or council member that you think could be a champion. Make sure they have some speaking points, that you support them, and that you let them know that they should get up there and talk and fight for what's right, that kind of thing. Little encouragement can go a long way. So it's really important to get out the vote. Sorry, I didn't check my watch, but hopefully I have like 2 more minutes to quickly go through. Some of the sessions are early. So if you look through the resolutions book, you'll see a Thursday morning at 8:35. There's a continuation of discussion of resolutions that have no recommendation. So unfortunately, we won't know until the first session is finished. You won't know which resolution we're on to start the next day. But those early resolutions, people are wandering around with their coffee, they slept in, they're tired, whatever went on. It can be dicey. So sometimes the votes are really close, and it really does matter. Every vote counts. So if you're really passionate about something, you might want to follow the conference and even see which resolution is going to come up on that Thursday morning on September 19th, and make sure that people are up and going to speak for or against what you would like them to talk about. So the other thing, just the types of advocacy, Sharon actually talked about this a little bit. Meeting with your voting delegate ahead of time, mayor or councillor. You could meet them in person or send them an email. You could present at a council or committee meeting when they're discussing a resolution to see if it's going to be supported or not at a council meeting. So that's already happened. Any resolution has to be endorsed by the promoting council. Otherwise, it just never gets to the conference. And then there's the regional conferences that also need to be endorsed if they're going to get that boost of extra support before they get to UBCM. But at the conference, there can be a lot of lobbying. You can talk to anybody you want. It's wide open. You can talk to, like as a delegate, I can talk to any person, including right outside the room, right before they want to vote. Sometimes there's emails to remind you to vote, or to remind you, or to ask for your support for a specific thing. There's leaflets sometimes left on the seat. So those could be put in ahead of time to say, vote yes on N whatever, NR 97. So sometimes you'll see those on the chairs. It helps highlight, because there's just so much information. So it makes everybody go, oh yeah, I got to pay attention to this number. And so that can be really, really helpful. And then of course, there's the speaking for or against when there's a resolution that comes forward for debate. And then finally, just quickly to follow up, to share the information and plan for the future. After the conference, if you're from a climate action group or an environmental group, please try to hold your councillor or mayor accountable, and also learn from it. Did they speak on an item? Was there a climate champion candidate that did get elected to the executive? Hopefully there'll be some good news to share and some lessons learned, and help preparing for the future. So I don't want to take up too much time, but I did also make some of these as written notes that could be provided in the package. And if anyone had questions, maybe there'll be time at the end, or if you have a burning question, you could pop that in right now. Thanks.
Thanks, Mary. There was one question in the chat there from Tracy, wanted to know, how do you follow the conference if you're not a participant of the conference? Is it possible for the public to follow that along?
Oh, FCM was what the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. People were watching. Not 100% sure how you would follow along, or if you would need to ask your counselor how things went. That is a really good question. That's a good question.
If somebody knows the answer to that, maybe you could put that in the chat. There is another question there. So how do I find out who my municipality's elected representatives are? That should be on your municipality's website. But the question might be, you might be asking, who are the delegates? Because not all elected representatives are delegates to UBCM. And again, that might just be a phone call to City Hall, and they can probably direct you. How soon in advance do you know that, Mary?
So we get asked actually quite early, because it's so hard to book the hotels.
So they'll already know for sure.
Most of us know. It's not usually too last minute. So you might email. All of our emails are public. So on our city's website, any mayor and council, and as far as I know, that's true for its public information. You have a contact email for councillors and mayors, and you could ask them, are they attending UBCM this year? And would they consider supporting whatever? So it's up to an individual whether they can get off work, whether they can, whether their council will support them financially or that kind of thing. So many don't. A lot do. It's a very important conference because that's how we advocate to the province. It's one of our main avenues for trying to get our voice out there for all the things that the province has control over so much of what happens at the local level. And sort of we're left holding the bag. So this is our big chance to speak with the province. So yeah, great questions. I'll try to have better answers for that next time. But
no, that's
how do you follow? That's a really good question.
Yep. And there was if you're following along in the chat, there's a link to the resolutions booklet from the UBCM website. Let me see. I'm just going through the chat here. So just to clarify, only electeds in the room can vote.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to be present to vote, or at least have your electronic device has to be active. And I know that
you
there
don't
was
necessarily
some,
need to be physically in the room.
there was some people that were trying to get extra votes to get elected to a position on the board, that they're like, even if you're not in the room, try to get on there and try to get in. And it's happening right now. And there's this frantic texting, but it's delegates in the room. And at least you have to be connected to that session with your electronic device. And then, so you're logged in, and then you only have 30 seconds to vote for each resolution. When the voting comes to, okay, we're going to call the question, and they start a clock. And if you have trouble logging in or something, too bad for you. So yeah, that's where it can be really important to be on the ball.
And so I'm just still going through some of the in the chat here. So do the delegates usually discuss the resolutions with council before the conference, or is it really, I mean, it really depends.
It really
everybody's
depends.
Going to be different.
Yeah.
Some will, some won't.
The resolutions that, say, Langford is bringing forward 3 resolutions. We've discussed those as a council. They are endorsed by the council, that kind of thing. We're also trying to let each other know, like, oh, just one-on-one, you try to say, hey, I'm really interested in this. Are you interested in this? Let's advocate for it. We have a Langford councillor, for example, who wants to be a member at large, and he's a fairly progressive councillor, so I'll be supporting him and encouraging people to vote for Councillor Keith Yakucha. I just happen to know him and believe he would be a good candidate. So there's all this sort of word of mouth and trying to have a conversation, but there's just so much information, we don't necessarily get a chance to really flush it out. And a lot of people don't have the environment as their number one concern. So even though hopefully I can persuade them to vote for, or at least show up or that kind of thing, so I do my part, but they might also do the same to me and say, no, you really have to think about this social justice issue, or you really need to vote for this firefighting effort, or whatever it is. So yeah,
so there's a couple really good questions in the chat here, and I do know, so there protests do occur outside the conference, and people that I think delegates are used to seeing that, and I've seen that for some of the other like the local area conferences and UBCM. Yep, there are generally protests and people that have something that they want to put in front of people's faces. I do like, let me see, there was a question here. Is it okay if only one delegate from a municipality votes? I think what that's asking is, can you stack the deck by just having everybody show up from Langford, if you had like a full slate there, and then or is it each individual delegate votes counts as one vote, or is it each municipality?
Each delegate gets a vote, and that's a great question, and it sort of speaks to why you want to be there in person, or at least you want to be a registered delegate and you want to know what's going on so that you're able to vote right at that time. So if there's 7 of us from Langford and we all make it a priority and we go there, we get 7 votes, and somebody from a faraway municipality and they don't have as much money, I know my dad lives in Lumbee, and so they have mayor and council in Lumbee, and they may not all make it, so maybe they only get 2 or 3 votes, but it's province wide, and so it hopefully comes out as whoever made it a priority to go there. But if you're a registered delegate and you've paid to be there, whether you're from the same municipality or the same region or anything else, you get
by delegate is the simple answer. So last question on this topic, I think we're going to cut it off and move on. Is the vote secret, or can citizens know how their councillor voted on specific resolutions?
Great question. So it's anonymous at the time, but you can ask anybody. And I have publicly said, I voted yes on this and I voted no on this. And sometimes you don't say because you don't want to get in hot water, but I vote every time. I really think it's important. So I personally go. I know other delegates that don't find it as important. But you can definitely ask your representative and they can just say, I prefer not to say. So it would have to be, it's not a publicly recorded vote. It's just this many for and this many against. That is the record.
All right. Thanks, Mary. I think what we're going to do is move on. And I'm sure these are great questions. I'm sure there's more. And so there's a few things that I wanted to highlight, and you already mentioned them, but I'm going to highlight them again. And that was what I mentioned at the beginning, 3 steps to success. And the first step is contact your local councillors. Contact your local delegates, find out who they are, whether it's by email or write a letter, phone them, ask to meet them in person, tell them that you would like them to support these motions. And then when you're talking with them, when you're having that conversation with them, I highly recommend that you, at that time, request a follow-up meeting after UBCM to find out how it went. That tells them that you plan to hold them accountable. And so that makes it more likely they're going to remember. As Mary mentioned, there's going to be over 100 resolutions. It's going to be a zoo. So it's really important that we want those resolutions that are important to us to be top of mind for them. And it'll be more top of mind if they know you're going to be hounding them and pestering them afterwards to say, hey, how did it go? So those are the 3 steps to success. Contact them by any and all means possible. Ask them to support the resolutions and candidates for the board election, and then request the follow-up afterwards to make sure that they're held accountable. So I noticed the conversation in the chat was getting towards motions like Sue Big Oil and those kinds of things, and whether or not fossil fuel companies will be funding the UBCM. And that brings us to the key resolution that we're going to be highlighting tonight. Again, there's many resolutions, and some of them may be very well aligned with you. I highly recommend you go through the resolutions book. We'll provide you with a short list of some that are very climate related. But this one is really key. And it was originally brought forward to Vernon City Council by Dr. Brian Guy. And Brian could not be with us tonight, but Casey Stein, as a former board member of WeCan, is going to be presenting to you his resolution and the reasons for supporting it. And so I'll introduce Dr. Brian Guy. He's an elected councillor in the city of Vernon. He holds a PhD in water resources engineering. He's a licensed professional geoscientist. He's got 40 years of professional experience. He's a founding member, past chair of the Okanagan Water Stewardship Council. He co-chaired the City of Vernon's Climate Action Advisory Committee, which led development of Vernon's Climate Action Plan. He served on the boards of the Okanagan Basin Water Board, the Sovereign Lake Nordic Club, and the Okanagan Science Center. And this resolution is coming to UBCM because he was able to get the city of Vernon to unanimously support this resolution. So Casey, you are up to present resolution NR 97. This is a big one.
Yes, thank you, Eric. I am not Dr. Brian Guy, but I am today's Dr. Brian Guy, as he was unable to make it, as Eric mentioned. I'm calling in from my home state of Texas, which is the unceded ancestral territory of quite a few tribes, including the Caddo, Wichita, Kickapoo, Tawakoni, Comanche, and many more, which our country in particular treated quite tragically. Um, Moving on to in our 97, I will say one thing first is I'm going to put, after I'm done speaking, a little document we put together in the chat, which is a spreadsheet, because if you go through the UBCM resolutions book, it's huge and it's intimidating. So we went through and we identified some of the resolutions that aren't already endorsed by the committee. So therefore the ones that might be spoken on individually. And we've got a spreadsheet that highlights some of those. So they're not necessarily pro-climate. We didn't really want to make a decision besides, for example, the most obvious ones like Inter 97, which I will now move on to. So basically, we already know a lot of this stuff. In BC, we are living with the devastating impacts of fires, floods, and other disasters every summer, other times of the year with the flooding too. Climate change is making these disasters worse, and burning fossil fuels is the major cause of climate change. That's why senior governments in Canada and around the world are mandating decarbonization, and provided by the city of Vernon and Brian, who put forward this resolution. There's at least 3 reasons, I think a lot more, but at least 3 reasons to reduce the influence of the oil and gas sector's access to local leaders. First, their messaging leads to complacency. The truth is, in about 10 years, you won't be able to buy a car or light truck that's not electric. And in about 5 years, it won't be legal to install a gas furnace in a new home. So we're heading to an electrified future in BC that's being mandated by higher levels of government. But ultimately, we're not ready for it. We need to be educating developers and contractors and working with colleges to train electricians and refrigeration techs and other tradespeople. But at these conventions, which I can attest this as well because I got to attend one as part of an internship, we hear reassuring messages from the oil and gas sector. And Fortis, the one that I attended, they sponsored like just a ridiculous amount of money for people to go get drinks and stuff. It's really silly. But you hear plenty of reassuring messages from the oil and gas sector about their decarbonization plans, combined with arm-waving talk about pipe dreams like renewable natural gas and hydrogen. Messages are very well crafted and delivered, and they settle into our subconscious. And the return on investment for their sponsorship dollars and their reassuring messaging is our collective complacency. Instead, we need to be taking bolder action to decarbonize. Second, there is a better alternative. Despite their best efforts, the oil and gas sector won't be able to deliver the substantial emissions reductions needed to meet our goals. I think we all know that and see past their advertising campaigns to suggest otherwise. And yet BC Hydro also produces clean, renewable electricity. And they are getting ready for the future by significantly expanding electricity supply and improving demand management and distribution systems. Third, we should be in charge of the energy transition, not the industry. There's kind of an obvious conflict of interest there. We were elected to be leaders, or we elected the leaders, and we demand that they make good choices. And we have a better alternative, especially for buildings and transportation in BC. It's an alternative that's being mandated by the province and the federal government. So let's break free of the messaging and the complacency that's making fires, floods, and other disasters worse and take charge of the future. That is where our communities and our kids and grandkids, including my generation's kids and grandkids, expect from us and need from us. Thank you.
Thanks, Casey, for speaking with Brian's voice as best as we can under the circumstances. So the resolution is simply to prohibit fossil fuel companies from sponsoring the UBCM conference or aspects of it, such as dinners or whatever, because when they sponsor it, they get 5 minutes at the mic. to speak their, I want to use the word propaganda, and I hope that's not too I see nodding heads. Okay. I feel very passionate about it, and I'm sure we all do. So we've already talked about the steps that you can take to help influence this vote. There's an additional campaign that Dogwood is leading, and that's in support of this specific motion. NR 97, as in no recommendation, number 97. And so I'm going to introduce Ashley Zarbatani. I hope I've said that name correctly. And Ashley currently lives on the traditional and unceded territories of the Esquimalt and Songhees First Nations. She is mixed race Ojibwe mom of 3, who's very concerned about the impacts that colonization and capitalism have had on our climate and on the lands and water we rely on for life. She currently works for Dogwood as their fossil gas campaigner, raising awareness about the dangers of fracked fossil gas and fighting back against Fortis's greenwashing and misinformation campaigns. Take it away, Ashley, and tell us about your amazing campaign.
And I'll add propaganda, because it is. They spend a lot of money on propaganda. Thank you so much for having me here tonight to talk about this letter writing action, and also thank you for prioritizing this resolution. I'm really, really glad and excited that we're talking about it here. I've been working with Brian for a little while to support him behind the scenes to get this resolution passed, trying to connect him with other progressive delegates who are going to be at UBCM, and also connecting him to different venues who can help support the resolution. So I'm really, really happy that WeCan has decided to prioritize it, because it is so important. I saw Jason made a comment in the chat that Fortis sponsoring, and not just Fortis, but all fossil fuel companies sponsoring local government initiatives is like having the tobacco industry sponsor a hospital. It's a huge conflict of interest. Local electeds are supposed to be listening to people, not to fossil fuel companies. So yeah, some of the things that we're doing to support Brian and to get this resolution passed is working with him, as I mentioned, but we're also going to be doing geo-targeted ads at the convention, and sending ads to anyone who's within the vicinity of the convention area. And those ads will end up leading them to a special page on our fortisexpose.ca website that we've put together. And that and on that page, we're going to be explaining why Fortis and other fossil fuel companies should have no say in local government, and how much they have been doing to manipulate the democratic process. This is sponsoring the UBCM is just one aspect of what Fortis has been doing. They've also been providing 6-figure salaries to staff on municipalities. They have a special program where they will give $100,000 to a municipality to fund a staff position. This is so wild. I can't believe that this is legal. It's so corrupt. And they have people like that, not just in local governments. They also have it in health authorities and different boards. So they know how to get their message out, and they're definitely engaged in a very large, expensive campaign to manipulate people and to manipulate decision makers in particular. So we need to stop them. So lastly, we're also going to write a joint letter with other organizations such as CAPE, and send that to delegates and city councils to support, to get support for this resolution. So if any organizations here are interested in signing on to that, please get in contact with me. I'll leave my email in the chat. But yeah, the main thing that we've been doing is we created a letter writing tool, and we sent it.
Oh, Ashley, you went on mute a few seconds ago.
Whoops, thank you. I was saying we created a letter writing tool for our supporters, and we sent it out to our list. And I've put it in the chat. But I would encourage everyone to please send this to your networks. If you have a supporter list, if you only just have a few friends, just send it to everyone you know. The more people we can get writing letters to local electeds, the better. Just like Mary and Sharon mentioned earlier, it makes a huge difference for our local leaders to hear from their constituents ahead of convention, and to know that they're going to be held accountable by those who put them into office. So we put together this letter, and the more people that we can get to send letters in, the better. And thank you so much for giving us the opportunity to share this with everyone here, because I know that this is a really important network, and I really appreciate all of the work that WeCan does. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashley. And I believe that was Guy that mentioned, yes, we're going to be including a lot of this information in our weekend newsletter this weekend. And with links to, you'll compile a lot of these links and provide it to you. I'm actually just going to post another document in the chat, which is a PDF that has some notes that we assembled, and some of the talking points about NR 97.
I think he sent that to me directly in a direct message, Eric.
I did. You're right. I don't know why that happened. Would you mind sending that to the group? Are you able to do that?
Sure.
You know what? I'll just
should
share. I'll share it again right here, right now, and that way it's there. It's really simple. Got it here, and I just have to send it to everybody and not just Casey. There you go. Now everybody should have that.
Yeah, Deborah has a hand
shortly. Yeah, Deborah, thank you.
Hi. I just see that Mary has offered to talk about the trade show, or I think it was Mary. I'm flipping. If time, I could comment on the trade show. Many groups tried to influence that way. So maybe could Mary have a second?
We will. And what I'd like to do though is, I'd like to finish this off by, I think there are a lot of ideas that some of you already have for initiatives, for campaigns, for actions that you've already planned on taking. And I'd like to provide people with the opportunity to do that. While we're doing that, to finish things off, we do have another survey that we'd like you to complete. And so while you're listening or participating in the last segment of tonight's event, I'd like to ask Guy to present the second survey, the next step survey. There you go. And while you're doing that, or while you're listening, please participate in that. What I'd like to do is, if you'd like to share something, your organization and the action that you plan to that you are hosting or participating in, please put up your hand, and we'll call you in turn and give you the opportunity to share that. So, Deborah, did you want to talk about that trade show?
Oh, wait, did I mute myself? No, I don't know anything about it. I just saw that Mary said something in the chat.
Right. Mary.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just be really brief. I just thought if people weren't aware, another area that has big influence is the trade show. People are trying to hand out swag. We all mill around there, get our wine and cheese, and everybody's there. Nuclear power, fossil fuels, green solutions, electric cars, like you name it, they're there. And they're all trying to, get our attention and give us erasers and tote bags and whatever. So that's another thing. I don't know. I haven't looked yet, There should be a list of trade show booth applicants or whatever they would be. I don't actually know. It's because I'm a privileged person to get to go to this actual conference, so I just show up and then wander around. But it might be something that if a climate group or environmental group was interested in knowing who was there, and to maybe let their delegate, if they know one of their elected officials is going to the conference, like, oh, please visit the booth on bioswales or whatever. Like, there's different ones, or don't. It's also just because we were talking about the propaganda with the fossil fuels, it just popped in my head that the trade show is another big place where they just really try to influence the delegates.
And is the trade show in conjunction with the UBCM convention?
Yeah.
And
so
is that
like
before, after, at the same time, or
there's a reception?
It's simultaneous?
There. Yeah, it's through. There's several giveaways, and they try to get you in there. And some of it's good. It's like solutions for municipalities, like the IT solution, or a lot of it is nonprofit organizations and other really, good information sharing. Like the Green Municipal Fund wants to give us money to do climate action. Like, I'm glad they were there. But there's also a lot of other, via rail, whatever, CPR. Like, there's just everybody there. So they're trying to get your attention and give you free socks and things. So I just wanted to say that there was a whole other, besides of the there's the resolution stuff, there's the sessions, and there's the trade show. So a lot of it's just really good information. There's information sessions for the delegates, but then there's this other stuff where it's like an advertising fest.
So a general letter to municipal council on this resolution is less effective than meeting face to face. I would probably say so. Yeah, I think so. You want to meet with people face to face, individually, and especially if they know that you're going to be following up with them again. That like, they're going to have to be saying to your face, "No, I didn't support this motion," or lie, right? At the very phone call, at the very least, right? But there's also this. There's also I think this is an important. It's an important truth that in order to be swayed, in order to be persuaded about something, we need to hear something 7 times from 7 different directions. So if you have a climate action group that's active in one community, and there's another climate action group that's active in the same community, overlap. There's no problem with that at all. If they hear it from the same source multiple times, that's great. People need to hear these messages over and over and over again, because we're speaking the truth. And the non-truth gets enough airtime that sometimes all we need to do is drown it out. So what I'd like to say is the survey that you're all that all of you, except some of you, haven't done it yet, but that maybe you're still working on it. So this survey is going to help us to understand how we can be better at this going forward. And as you may or may not know, so there's the local area conferences where there's the Island Coastal Communities network, there's the Lower Mainland Local Government Association, there's I think there's about half a dozen or so throughout the province, regional associations, and this is kind of a smaller subset of the UBCM. And some of these resolutions also go to those organizations first. They may be directed at that organization, or they may then go on to UBCM. So there's 2 opportunities for you throughout the year to influence, to influence these conventions. And so now is the time to get started. So I'm hoping that, as much as we're probably hitting you with a fire hose of information tonight, that you're able to do something. And it's not necessary to do everything. But what we're trying to do is give you a lot of different options so that you can pick and choose what works for you. And every little bit that you do helps, and it will make a difference. It's better than doing nothing. And so we're starting with something, and we will learn, and we will grow, and the next time we'll be able to do more. Has anybody not yet had a chance to complete the survey, or does anyone have any actions that they'd like to share with the group?
I had a question if the survey was open and I just can't see it, or can it be like?
It should be.
Well, 23 people have found it, so I didn't know why.
I don't see it popping.
If you go to more in Zoom and then go to polls quizzes, if you haven't filled out the survey, you should be able to do it.
Oh, thank you.
I see
Gotcha.
your hand, Roger, and there's also a question in the chat. So from Dora, but Roger, why don't you ask your question?
Thank you. I'm wondering if Ashley could share some of her ideas that Dog would have for participation, please, if she's got a moment.
At UBCM?
Exactly. Thank you.
Oh yeah. Please write that letter, number one. That's the number one thing. I am going to be speaking with Paige tomorrow to see if there's any possibility to do some sort of outside action. We don't have the capacity to do a major protest or anything because it's the climate strike that week. So all of the organizers in Vancouver are quite stretched. But I know that there's interest from a few people to stand outside with a banner and hold hold signs. And we have created some flyers that we were going to put, we were hoping to put on CAPE's table. They've offered to let us put materials at their table at the trade show. But it would be great to have volunteers in Vancouver actually hand out those flyers to delegates as they come in and out of the convention center. So if anyone here is based in Vancouver and wants to help with that, please do get in contact with me. It doesn't have to be like a big event, but I think it is important that we show up and give delegates that information straight to their hands, because that's pretty impactful. And it's just important for them to know that they're going to be held responsible or accountable rather. So yeah, that's one of the things that we're doing that is open, that we need help with in addition to the letter writing, and also in addition to the joint letter that we're doing with different organizations. Everything else is kind of just ads and comms. So yeah, but thank you for asking that. I really appreciate that question, Roger.
Well, one of the things I'm thinking about specifically is on the resolution to get the oil and gas industry out of sponsoring. And, you know, if we could hand that out to delegates as they're going in, if you can make a few hundred copies. Thank you.
Yeah, no, we have it. We have the flyer, and on the flyer, we actually have a QR code that leads to the letter writing campaign that I've linked in the chat. So then the delegates would see the flyer and also be aware that there is this larger campaign. But yeah, I would love it if people handed those out. Thank you, Roger.
Eric, should we end the poll?
Yeah, let's end a poll. Thanks, everybody. And thank you for bearing with us in some of our technical issues. These things do come up.
Doug has his hand up.
Oh, Doug, yeah.
Hi, thanks. I don't know if you can see me. I'm on my phone, but anyway, just let you know that CAPE. Yeah, sorry, yeah. Anyway, CAPE, which is the Canadian Association of Physicians for the Environment. CAPE has a table. We bought a table, and we will be lobbying delegates to vote against oil and gas subsidizing the meeting and promoting the meeting. And we plan to have handouts and to have some way of enticing people over to come and visit us and talk to them about the whole issue. So if Dogwood's planning to have leaflets they hand out while people are coming in, Deb Curry is the person who's coordinating things for our table with CAPE.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
To her. We've already connected.
Perfect. Thanks, Ashley.
So as you said, there's lots going on. We will do our best to send you as much information as we can, including the recordings. The next thing I would say is to look out for, we will be providing information in the upcoming newsletter, and everyone who's in attendance tonight, we will send you out an invitation to join a Google group, or we will use that group to send information, links, documents, as much as we can. And realizing that emails tend to get flooded, but we're going to try to give you as much information as you can in hopes that you find some of it useful. And just as a quick note here, in terms of the survey results, the top two that people have indicated, the top two actions that people indicated that you plan to do, 65% of you will be emailing your local council delegates, 61% will be joining Dogwood's letter writing campaign in support of NR 97. 52% will be following up with your local council delegates after the UBCM to hold them accountable. I love it. Fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for participating and joining tonight, and your enthusiasm and your dedication. You're all wonderful. Good night, everybody.